In the spring of 2001, 24 years ago, Christine and I were looking for fellowship, a home church. We were living in Benbrook, Texas at the time, and we were just praying about a lot of things, and this was one of the main ones. We were pretty settled in our jobs, but we really needed fellowship. Through contact that we had in the community, we received an invitation to attend a church that, for the sake of this story, I'm going to call Church 236. This church experience that we were about to have from the spring of 2001 all the way through the fall of 2002 would turn out to be one of probably the most pivotal experience that we've ever had in regards to setting our callings in a certain direction and giving us an idea of what the Lord was trying to educate us about and what he was about to do with us. We got an invitation to go to this church. We went to the first service that we went to. It was pretty flat. Not a lot happened. It was just a normal church service with worship and word time, and nothing really happened. We kind of went stagnant for a little bit, maybe a month. We were looking for a church, just kind of praying for direction. And Christine one day said to me, I think we need to go back and visit this church, Church 236. So reluctantly we did, and reluctantly for me, because I didn't really feel that led there at the time. And I prayed before we went into this second service. And specifically what I said to the Lord was, Lord, if this is where you want us to go and I'm just not picking up on it yet, I need you to show me something in this service. And so we go on a Sunday morning. The worship's good. During the middle of the worship, one of the elders of the church walks to the front of the room, and he grabs a microphone and he has the worship team stop the music completely. And he said to the congregation, he said, someone in this room tried to commit suicide this week. Who is it? And suddenly a young man, a teenager, stands up, walks to the front of the room, and the elder in this church starts praying over this boy. And we found out later on through another person that what had happened with this kid had tried to kill himself, and God had intervened. He'd ingested something, and the way his testimony was, you could tell that the Lord intervened in his attempt and saved his life. And while this is happening in this service, there's not a dry eye in the room. People are crying. I remember, tearing up. It was very moving. It was very emotional. And then the senior pastor stands up in the word time, and he just starts preaching. And I remember him actually saying this. He said he took his hand and he swiped it across the pulpit. He said, just in case anyone was wondering if I could preach without notes. He said, I think I'm going to preach without notes today. Well, that was a big deal to me, in addition to what happened for the boy, because every time I preach, I don't use notes. I feel a certain direction. I know the word. I know the scriptures. And we have so much testimony in the Lord that I know how to get up there and not ad lib, but I know how to get up and just kind of move. I don't feel like I need to write anything down. I don't recall any time I've ever ministered in a church or in a small group setting where I ever took notes. Matter of fact, the few times that I did, it didn't work out well. So the way the Lord has fashioned me is I don't use notes. And so when this minister stood up and said that, I felt like there was sort of something striking a chord within me, in addition to what happened with the boy with the power display. And so I looked at my wife when the service was over, and I said to her, I think the Lord may be leading us to this church, obviously. And so we did start going there, and specifically Christine was going to a women's meeting that was happening in an adjoining room to the main sanctuary before the services would start. So sometimes we would drive separately. I would bring the boys separately because Joseph at that time was, I think, like 2 years old. So I would give her the liberty to go to, her women's meeting, and I would take care of the boys, and I would bring Kevin and Joseph, and, she would go to the women's meeting, and then we would go for the main service. And this women's group ended up being a really good thing for Christine. She started to connect in deep relationships, and it was kind of her relationships with the women in the women's ministry was kind of the entry point really for us relationally in this congregation. It was a good thing. Christine's very easy to get along with. She's a very gracious woman. You meet her, you love her. She's just a very unoffensive person. She's very gracious. She's a wonderful, God-fearing, loving lady, and she's a joy to be around, and people love her. And so anytime the Lord is trying to graft us into a group, she's usually the one that kind of helps. The Lord uses her to help open the door because she's just so good with people. And so over the course of the spring and into the summer, this was kind of our routine. I was a manager with the Olive Garden at the Hewlin store in Southwest Fort Worth. I was a sales manager there. I was going through a season where the Lord was telling me that I was about to transition into real estate. So there was a sequence of time where for about 6 months, the Lord was talking to me and preparing me and telling me, you're about to leave the Olive Garden and go into real estate. So this was pretty much our lives. This congregation, my job transition. Christine worked from home. We had young boys. And Christine was also pregnant with our daughter, Elizabeth. And Elizabeth would be born in the early winter in December. And Elizabeth passed away 3 weeks after she was born. Elizabeth's life and the trial that we went through with having her, she was a Down syndrome baby. She had a major heart defect. She was missing a pumping chamber. It was a trial that we walked through that the Lord used to get us very close to the people in this congregation. We were making a lot of friends. We were becoming part of a family in that community. And it was something that you hope and pray for to have in your life as a Christian. We were doing very well, prospering. We felt like we were really prospering, but the trial that we were in was Elizabeth's short life. And she was born and went right into ICU. Her heart defect did not allow her body to oxygenate properly. She only lived for 3 weeks. During that time, I ended up getting pretty close to the senior pastor of this church. And he would come to the hospital every day. Christine and I, or myself, we were down there every day at the hospital in ICU. And this particular man and I were spending a lot of time together, and we were getting to know each other. He was probably spending more time with me than anyone else in the congregation. And he got a chance to watch our family up close through that trial. I felt like we were walking in a very strong, close relationship with the Lord, and he got a chance to see it. And then he even discussed it with me several times that he could see that we were walking very closely and very intimately with the Lord. Well, right around that time, right before Elizabeth's birth, I had a dream. I believe the Lord gave me a dream about what our time would be like in this church that we were in. And specifically, what happened in this dream was that I was standing on the platform where the pastor preached from every Sunday. And the pastor I'm referring to was standing on my right. I was standing next to him on his left on the platform, looking out over the congregation while a church service was going on. The pastor was holding the microphone with both hands. He would not let me hold the microphone at all. He would, even though I was supposed to be talking to the congregation, I knew I was the one that was just supposed to be sharing something. He would not allow himself to let go of that microphone. He was holding on to it with both hands. So in the dream, I'm leaning over to my right. He's on my right. And I looked at the congregation and into the microphone. I said to them, we not only know about the Lord Jesus Christ, we know the Lord Jesus Christ. We not only know about the Lord Jesus Christ, we know the Lord Jesus. And when I said that, I looked to my right, and my wife was sitting with the elders of the church. The elders and their wives sat in a very specific area in the church. And my wife was sitting with those people. And when I looked at her, I knew that the Lord was showing me. It was like a word of knowledge that hit me in the dream. I knew the Lord was going to put us in leadership in that church. And when I said what I said about not only knowing about the Lord Jesus Christ, but we knew him personally, all of a sudden I felt this sense of persecution hit me like I was being chased. And I jumped off the stage and I sprinted down the aisle and back towards the back of the sanctuary. I looked to my right, and the pastor that was holding the microphone was chasing me around the sanctuary. He was coming around another aisle, and he was chasing me, and he was in effect chasing me out of the church. The word for persecute in Spanish, because I speak quite a bit of Spanish, the word is perseguir. It's where we get the word persecute, and it literally means to chase away. As he's chasing me around the back, I catch a reflection of myself in the glass because we met in a shopping strip mall at that time. That's where the church was located. And I caught a glimpse of myself like a mirror, a reflection in the glass in the back of the sanctuary. And in the sanctuary, in the reflection, I could see I was wearing a white shirt, black pants, and black shoes. And I had a belt around my waist, and what I noticed was that my belt was hanging loose. It wasn't cinched all the way. I was wearing a belt, but it needed to be cinched tight. And that was the end of the dream. So I had this dream, and then we have Elizabeth, and then I spend a lot of time with the senior pastor during Elizabeth's life and subsequent passing. And all of this was forming as a setup. After Elizabeth passed away, we were asked to be cell pastors in this church. The church at the time had 16 home groups in it. The church had roughly 300 members, and they had 16 groups of people that met in homes on a weekly basis. We were asked to be the 17th group the following spring. They had these cycles where they had home groups. I guess they started in the spring and they went all the way, I think, into the fall roughly. And they had like these 6-month cycles during the year. So we prayed about it, and we felt like this was what the Lord was showing us and had been showing us. So we started a group in the spring of 2002. And it had immediately, we had 45 people attend the group. Now that included the kids, but I mean, we had such a large group of people now in our, I mean, we were meeting a lot of people, we were connecting with a lot of people. And our house just filled up literally overnight. First group, we had more people in the room than we had seats around the room. I mean, it was, the kids were everywhere, and we got permission to, because there's so many people. I mean, 1 out of 6 people, 1 out of 7 roughly in the church were in our group, counting the kids. And so we start this group, and we were sort of on our way to the fulfilling some of the things that I saw in that dream. This is such a long story that I'm going to actually break this up into a couple of different, maybe 3 videos, because there's so many things that started to happen spiritually, both good and some of it bad, that it's going to take me a little bit of time to kind of break it down and explain to you what exactly happened and sort of do the story justice. So I'm going to cut this one off. I'm going to leave this as part 1, and then we're going to start a part 2 and get into the real guts of this home group experience that we had, that had some twists and turns in it that I'm sure many people will be able to relate to, hopefully. Hopefully it'll mean something to you and serve as just sort of a witness of maybe some things that you've seen, or maybe an explanation of some things that you've seen in your own life, and kind of give some breakdown of what we think happened, maybe some mistakes that we made, triumphs that we had, and see what God does with it. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to cut it off here, and we'll probably go to part 2 on the next video.